Hi everyone, back again with a new tutorial now on how to create a procedural landscape in 3D Studio Max. We'll be focusing on creating a river-like landscape, and let's get started. So I'll start by making sure I'm working in meters, since this will be a fairly big scene. I'm gonna make a plane, a regular plane, square, 2000 meters by 2000 meters. Let's bump this up 100 by 100. I like centering things. Now, the main technique we'll be using to create this landscape will be by the use of the displace modifier, and we'll use turbo smooth over our plane with the render iterations of 2 for now, and a displace over it. On the displace, just make sure to use existing mapping, and for now that's all. Let's set up a displacement map for this. So using a basic gradient ramp, we'll be able to create some very interesting landscapes. Let's start with the gradient ramp. So let's start by creating the river line. So this will be black, this will be black, we'll have white, white, black, and black. And 255. Okay, so now we have our basic. Just center this a bit better. With this, you'll be able to define, if I doing it the other way around, so let me just reverse this. Okay, so now we have something to start. Try to make this more accessible, maybe this side. So now I'm gonna just wire this to the map instance, and let's say 150 meters. So as you can see, we already have something like a river geography. And let's start by adding some noise. Maybe adjust the scale, and as you can see, immediately we have a really nice starting point to get to that kind of landscape. You can make this however you want. You can change the noise type, but for now we'll be working with the regular noise, just working with these values and trying to get something interesting out of this. I don't want this to go to be this big, so maybe 2.4, something like this, maybe a bit more, 0.25, 0.3. Yeah, I think another plane will help us. I'm gonna change the color of this object. Okay, make a copy. Made an instance, sorry. Delete. Just pull it over a bit, and then we'll have a simulation of it's a better way to visualize the kind of sculpting, landscape sculpting we're making. Let's see, what else can we try? Yeah, I think I like this one. Maybe it's a bit too windy. 0.32. Yeah, you have a nice amount of control over this, um, and you can work on these edges if you don't want this the noise to spread out so much. If you want to avoid this kind of element coming up, so yeah, I think this will work. Yeah. So this is the our starting point, the most basic element. Now, what we want is that what we have here right now is a really a very contrasty map, displacement map. So we get to this plateau on both sides, and we want to attenuate that plateau. We want to have a progression. We want this the height to be at its peak more towards the edges of the plane. So what we'll do is we'll combine this gradient ramp with another one similar to this one, or basically essentially the same with just a few changes, and combine that with a regular noise. Let's say a standard noise. Let's say a fractal one or turbulence, maybe explicit map channel 0.1. And let's connect this to our displace, and it'll be easier to see what kind of gradient we have. Immediately we have another solution if you want to create. This could be a really nice idea to create some sort of island group. So this could work for another kind of landscape. But for now, we'll be using this together with another gradient ramp. I'm going to copy this one, holding Shift, just drag it to the side, and I'll connect this one to instanced. And what I'll be doing is I won't have this contrast in this very short gradient between the black and the white flag. So I'll be pulling this back like this, and this one also, and that way we won't have the plateau until we get to the edge. You can control, you can take advantage of this any way you want, but for now this is what we'll be doing. I'm gonna increase this a bit. Remember, this won't be our river line. This is just for us to combine with the original river line. And now what I'll be doing is replacing one of these noises colors by the gradient ramp. So what we have here is basically what we're looking for. So we'll have black in the areas where the river should be, and we'll be only be adding this kind of noise pattern to the margins of our original displacement. We'll use composite, and new layer, and we'll connect this and multiplying. Not multiplying. Let's see, kind of get confused here. So we want to run the other way around. And multiplying. Yeah. So yeah, this is what we want. We'll be replacing. Yeah. So since we'll be multiplying, it doesn't matter if we'll be having if we have some of this noisy pattern coming up in in the river line. We want this to happen around the edges, around the river line. So multiplying black with whatever value, it will always turn black. So let's see what this gives us. Yeah. So right now we have a bit more interesting margins. If we bump up the displays, we'll be able to see that we have a lot more detail, more refined geometry that goes towards the edge and eventually gets to these plateaus. If you want to completely eliminate the plateaus, you can probably just delete this, delete, and we still have some plateaus, but we could fix that, but I don't think then it's worth might not be worth the work. So for now, we had this first displacement, and now what we're doing is that we're adding this one, or multiplying with this one, and we get this. Now we can control the opacity of the second layer and decide how much of that we want. I don't want the river line to grow too much, so I might also just reduce this a bit further. Yeah, and I think this will look okay. I'm gonna pull the water down a bit, maybe to around 10 meters. Yeah, I think we're good. So, yeah, just not like in those plateaus, but we'll take care of that if it comes to that. So the interesting thing about this is that now, since we have these two gradients controlling all the landscape, we can actually use a single controller, a single Bezier float to control the phase of this. I'll show you that later. But what I mean is that you can just come here and completely change your landscape with just that value. What else? We'll be adding another layer of displacement to this. So you can add as many as you want. I'll be adding a second level of detail to this, and a more refined level of detail. I'm gonna bring my iterations down, my render iterations up, and I'll add another turbo smooth, and another displace, and we'll create another map that we'll use to add another layer of detail to this, like some holes. Let's use a different map. Let's use a cellular. And let's use, so since we're gonna be making holes, I'm gonna make this like -20. Use existing mapping, and yeah. So for now this gets weird because he's pushing downwards in the normals direction, and this happens. So don't worry about it. So now the cellular explicit map channel, same thing. Fractal, reduce the size and reduce the spread. Yeah, maybe too much. 0.2, no, 0.1. Maybe the size 0.4. Yeah, let's see what this gets us. So if I turn this on and pull this here, yes, You see, we had another layer with a couple of some holes, but I don't want to apply those holes to the margin area, so I can use this map as a mask for to define where do I apply, where I'll be applying this one. So another layer of detail that I want to be adding is the maybe just a regular fractal noise. Explicit map channel again, fractal 0.01, too much, 0.05, yeah. Add a couple more levels to this, and I guess that's it. So I want to combine these two again. I'll have another composite. This will be the layer I'll be applying so to the overall thing. As you can see, we get a bit more some sharpening of the shapes, which is important. I might be going a bit too far with the value, maybe -12. Yeah. And we add a little more detail to the surface that we won't be able to see because I don't want to push the viewport too much. So, and we'll combine this with with this one, and let's say we subtract, yeah, and make this, wire this here. So we're subtracting, and no, I want to be adding because I have a negative value. I was forgetting about that. And like I said, we'll be using this as a mask for the second layer, so we won't have any holes near the water margins. Yeah, something like this. It should become. It should be interesting. This, and I think that's it for now. Let's set up just a basic lighting and a camera so we can have a better look at what we're doing. I'm gonna come here to perspective view. Choose an angle. Yeah, something like this. And I'll be creating a camera, Control C. I'll be using physical camera exposure control. Let's just specify the 50 millimeters. I like using the regular, let's say 116, and the exposure manual at 200. And now let's create a sun. Lights, V-Ray sun. I'm gonna push it towards this side, I guess. Yeah. Yes. Pull it up slightly, not too much. Let's give it a bit of a magic hour look, and yeah, this should work. Let's see what we get. I'm gonna open my render setup. I have this, and what else? Irradiance map, very low, light cache, regular, standard settings, so we should be good to go. Yeah, so this is what we're getting. No materials applied, so that's probably a bad idea. Let me just I'm gonna create the materials right here because I might be using these maps just in case. V-Ray material. Let's say we have land material, which will stay gray for now. And I'll create a new view for water. Let's just make it blue for now. Land and water. Probably didn't lock the viewport, so I might be getting the wrong render. Yes. So it renders pretty fast. We're not using any extremely complicated or heavy geometry, but we can get to that point. So we have a nice water line going over. If we don't like the, I'm not a particularly fan of this kind of wall or something there. So let's see if I can just change my phase to avoid that big wall. Zero 0.2. Nope. 1. Let's see. Yeah, I think I like this better. Yeah. So right now what I would like to do is to add a different kind of displacement to these borders. I don't really want it to have the same kind of expression. We already have something to make it different from the rest of the landscape. We have these holes only happening on the higher areas. So, but still, I would like to have something, those lines, those sediment lines that you usually see along these river bends. So, a quick way to add that is by using applying a different UV, map channel 2, and I'll be adjusting this in the Y fit. Yeah, just gonna make it slightly bigger or higher, taller, higher, and give it just a bit of a rotation. Yeah, I think this should work pretty well. And the idea is to apply a gradient ramp, but having this plane, this UVW map, project the gradient ramp in a horizontal way, and then we'll define. Let me just hide the lights in the camera. We'll be able to control where that kind of displacement will happen. And make a mask based on the height of the terrain. So if let me just show what I mean. If I do a gradient ramp, let's say this will be our mask to define where we'll have one type of displacement and the other type of displacement. Just gonna apply it here. Let's say this is map 2, map channel 2, and let's make this visible on viewport. So map channel 2, I need to rotate this. Yeah, and here you have it. So we have kind of a mask based on the height of the landscape we're making. So those on the white areas, let me pull this bit down. Yeah, I only want those kind of details, that kind of displacement happening here on the white areas. I don't want it going any higher than that. And on the black areas, we'll have a different kind of displacement, something like this. We don't need to have a solid transition. We can, of course, have a linear transition. Let's say this is black, and let's say this is white, and let's have something like this. Yeah, this should look interesting. And then the pattern we'll be using here in this in the white areas will be can just make a copy of this one. Let's make it solid, and I'll be using the same kind of projection, and what I'll do is I'll just add random grayscale values to different flags. Let's go white. Let's go gray. Something like this. So we have this pattern, and we don't need to go too much into it. We can just and I'm going into it, saying this, but still going into it. Let's say, yeah. And we can just do a tile. 2, 3, maybe 4. You shouldn't be able to notice the repetition, though. If we do, we just come over and merge a couple of them, so it's okay. And the idea is to have this pattern making the displacement. So I'm gonna tile a bit more, like 6, yeah. And this should be creating the displacement. Yeah, those kind of lines I was talking about. Maybe more, like 12, yeah. And we'll put this in a mix. This will be our mix mask, and we'll have this in the white. Yeah. Don't worry about this. The mix doesn't really compute you in terms of viewport. It doesn't really compute very well those things, but we can also use a different approach. Yeah, let's see if I can just put this here and flag. This is flag. Sorry. So this is flag 4 and this is flag 2. So let's come to flag 4 and flag 2 and just wire this in. And yeah, still some issues. So let's just keep it like it was and reuse the mix. Yeah. And we shouldn't have any problem with it. It's just a viewport thing. To make sure, we can just make a quick render. Just isolate this and make sure we have everything working. Okay, no GI. Render. Yeah, so we're good. Don't worry about these bottom lines, which seem to be working nicely, though. So this is what we'll be using for the displacement, and we'll be using not as another displace, though we could, if we want. If you want, we could. You can always use another displace, but no, we'll be using a view displacement modifier, which is pretty awesome. So view displacement modifier, texture channel 2. And let's add this mix. Yes. And the amount should be maybe like 2 meters. Maybe that's too much. I'm gonna get our water. Let's just quickly make some water. Something like this, lots of reflection. Let's override this to 1.8. Just so we have some nice reflection, 0.98 and 1.33. Some refraction. I'm not going to go into fog or anything. Yeah, but at least we should be able to see some nice reflections. How long are we? Yeah, it's becoming a really long video, but yeah, we'll stop we'll stop right here, and we can go on with take this just a tiny bit further with textures and everything, but you get the point, right? This was the main goal right now. Then you can have a lot of control using these techniques. You can, even for the different textures, the materials, creating a wet map, creating a transition area, and then defining the other material using this kind of perspective, or rendering this type of view. You can even get away really well with just bump, because the light is really coming through the side, and we're looking. We have almost a top view, so this should work really well. So I'll probably be doing a part 2 for this, to just finish this thing, and hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.